Hello friends. Another month, another vlog. In my last vlog, I had just finished the Una and Vari book, which if you've been following me a while, you'll know I've been working on this book. I don't know when I started it. Might have been a couple years ago, probably shortly after I finished writing Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy. And this book just gave me a lot of trouble. I loved the characters, I loved the voice, the humor. Like, the little moments were very fun to write, but the story itself as a whole, I struggled with it. I had a hard time bringing it all together. But I'm finally at a place where I'm happy with it. I've gone over it so many times, like tweaking little things to make it all kind of become a cohesive story, and I feel good about it now. And now I'm doing the final line edits on it. I'm almost done with that part, so that's really exciting. I also worked on the cover for it. Now, if you can afford to have someone else do your covers, I always recommend that, unless, you're like a designer. I definitely struggle with making my own covers. When it comes to cozy fantasy, you can just kind of use objects and like little decorative elements that you can find on Canva. It definitely works. I made the covers for Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy with a little help from a friend, and then I completely made the Potion Dealer's cover by myself. And I think they work pretty well. I've generally gotten pretty good feedback on them, and they continue to get sales. But I will also admit, they don't look as good as some of the professional covers that are out there. But I'm at a point where I'm just kind of rebuilding my writing career from scratch, and I'm not making a lot of money. So it's really hard for me to justify spending a few $100s on a cover when books are only making like $1,000. That's really taking a lot of the profit away. And there's no guarantee that they would do better if I spent more on the cover. Sometimes they do, but I certainly know from experience that's not always the case. A lot of times having a good title, vibe, and blurb go just as far as having like the best cover. It just really depends. So anyway, I designed the cover and I played with a couple of different looks. I had one that I was like fairly happy with it, but a couple people said that it looked a little too busy and that the elements didn't really quite fit together, and I kind of agreed with that because I had like little pictures that had multiple colors and like shading, and then I had silhouettes of people, and it was really bothering me that those things didn't match. One thing about covers that I find so tricky is I can look at the cover of like other cozy fantasies and like it looks pretty easy to design, right? They're very maximalist. There's just a lot of stuff, you'll just have a mess of like little decorative frills and silhouettes of, cupcake, book, little baby dragon or cat, whatever. And then you'll have like pretty font treatment, and it'll all just be kind of a little bit of a mess maybe, but like it comes together in a way that works. And I'll always think like I could do that, but then when you sit down to actually do it, it's like it just doesn't look right, and you keep playing with it, trying to make it look right, and it just won't look right no matter what you do. Some people on my Discord were like, well, if you just change those pictures to silhouettes, that'll match, that'll look better. But like I'd already tried that and I couldn't find like the right silhouettes or like the placement. Like just something's always off. Like if you change one little thing, it can completely throw off the whole thing and make you feel like you got to change another thing. And then that thing makes you feel like you got to change another thing. And the whole time you can't quite articulate what's even wrong. You just know that something is. So designing a cover is definitely a talent, and it takes a lot of time to design my own. So if time is money, like this is my calculation, is if it takes me like 10 hours to design a cover, if I get back to a point where I'm making like $30 per hour of work, then I'll go back to hiring someone. But for now, this was the final cover, and it seems to be working out just fine. There are some books upcoming that I know I'm going to have to pay somebody to do the cover, primarily The Shattered King. That one is not a cozy fantasy, so it's definitely going to need a cover that is beyond what I can do. So that's another factor that I'm having to consider, is that I have to make sure I can shell out money for a cover in the future, knowing that I'm probably not going to make a lot of money on that particular book because of paying for the cover. At least not anytime too quickly. So got the cover, and of course, as you will have seen, I've got the title now, which is Wanted, Brooding Man, Tragic Past. That was just like my goofy working title, and several different people reacted really well to it and told me, like, no, that really needs to be the actual title. And I realized that, yeah, actually that is a great title. It's always nice when you have a fun title that kind of conveys things that well. So got a cover, got a title, working on the line edits. It's all coming along. Very exciting to have a second release this year because the last few years have just been chaos. I haven't had a lot of time to write, but this year feels like I'm getting somewhere a little bit. I've actually made it to have 2 releases this year, so yay for that. And then I wrote the blurb, which, you know, I revised the blurb for the Potion Dealers so much. I think I made a whole video about like rewrites of the blurb. This one I pretty much just wrote the blurb, and I felt like it was pretty good the first time. And I think part of that is just there's a very clear-cut idea to this book. It's very simple to explain. Una reads a lot of Gothic novels, and she has this idea in her head of the perfect Gothic brooding, tragic past man, but then she has Vari, the boy she's known forever. They both love books. He also reads the same novels, and they have so much in common, but he went off to fight in the war, and ever since he's been missing. And that is the trigger for her to realize that, like, somebody needs to go find him, and maybe that someone has to be her. And maybe the reason that she wants to find him is because her feelings for him are a little more complicated than she wanted to admit. And then, of course, along the way, Una grows as a character and kind of reconnects with her own ambitions in life beyond just finding a brooding man with a tragic past. And Vari, being a sweet, supportive kind of guy, helps her to realize that. And Vari has his whole own ambition going on in the book, but although that is a large part of the plot, I did not feel like I needed to mention it in the blurb. Una and Vari are both super fun characters to write. Una can be very overdramatic. She's a little over the top. She really, really, really wants her life to be as exciting as a novel, but at the same time, when those moments actually arise, she starts to realize that that actually isn't very fun. One of the scenes that I had a lot of fun writing is when her and Vari are finally starting to get together and maybe going to get intimate. And she keeps kind of wanting him to ravish her and then realizing, like, actually, maybe I'm a little scared to be ravished. She can't quite decide whether or not she wants to be actually ravished in real life or not, which leads to her giving Vari some mixed signals throughout the book, which then leads to him being a little stressed out about whether or not, like, what does this girl want from me? And Vari himself, he's very sweet. He's also fun to write because he's like very, very enthusiastic about a lot of things. He's just like, he's a little bit of a, like, Una refers to him as a ridiculous boy and a doofus at a couple different points. And, like, she's not entirely wrong. He is definitely, like, very smart, but also, like, has a certain sweet obliviousness to him that I find very charming to write. Somewhere, I can't tell you exactly who I've known who was like an Una and Vari couple exactly, but even though they're both a little over the top, they feel to me over the top in a way that is very relatable. Like, I feel like I've totally known, like, a nerd couple that is exactly like this in their dynamic. It's very fun for me when I get characters that are different from anybody else I've ever written, but I'm not having trouble connecting to them. It feels like a real treat to me because it's something that sort of happens on accident. I can't sit down and be like, I want to write characters that are different from any other characters I've ever written. I can't make it happen. They just have to show up and tell me about themselves. And that's what happened here. And it's been a lot of fun. The other kind of unusual thing about these two, like, if you've read Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy, the Vendiri community that they're a part of, I think of them as the fantasy goths. They worship death gods, and they wear all black for the most part. They have the bones of their ancestors like on display in an altar in the entrance of their homes. They all attend their temple for the services for their gods on a weekly basis. And Una, like, her religion means a lot to her. Now, in Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy, Dor does not really super believe in the religion. He just kind of goes to religious services because it's what you do. Whereas Una is more of like, this really means something to me. And Vari also is a fairly devout Vendiri, which is a weird, like, I am really struggling to think about any other books I've read where the characters are both religious. Like, outside of books where that's kind of the whole point, like a book about, you know, a contemporary, you know, Orthodox Jewish girl or something where the book is trying to make kind of a point of, like, introducing readers to, like, a certain religion, or obviously if it's, like, Christian fiction or something that's, like, meant to be religious. But just, like, a random fantasy book where the characters are religious, I didn't really plan on that, and it's a little strange. But I kind of enjoyed writing that part because it was sort of different. And, you know, in real life, probably all of us know people who have a variety of relationships with religion and spirituality. Like, I know some people that are atheists, and I know some people that go to church every week, and I know people that are, like, practicing Wiccans, and, you know, my friend group, they're all over the place as far as where they are with religion and spirituality. And I've represented a lot more of just the more people that don't really think that much about religion and spirituality, or people who are in more of just a loose, you know, new agey spiritualism, which is more like, I'm probably more in the realm of sometimes I doubt everything and sometimes I don't, but it's definitely more nebulous. But that's not true for everybody I know. And it was kind of fun to write about specific, like, religious practices from characters who really believe in this stuff and have a positive effect on their lives. And it's not a heavy thing. I feel like in fantasy, a lot of times when you do find religious characters, the religion feels very like this. The whole culture revolves around, like, almost somewhat authoritarian gods and the priest, and, you know, like, even when the character has, like, is a true believer, the religion itself feels kind of negative. And it was actually kind of fun to write about characters that, like, just have, like, a lighthearted relationship with a religion and religious rituals without it being like they're not trying to convert anybody. Or, like, I kind of like the Vendiri religion because they don't really, like, their gods are not gods of judgment. They're, like, gods of welcoming. Like, the Colonites don't really have a particular religion per se. They believe not so much in, like, specific god figures, but in fate and karma. And they kind of believe in this in just a way, like, it's just a law of the universe. Not that there's any one particular deciding it, but just that there is some kind of law of correctness in the universe. And if you are good, you will be reincarnated into a better position. And if you are bad, you will be reincarnated into a worse position. But beyond that, they're not very religious. I feel like they don't even, for the most part, think of it as a very religious belief. They think of it like gravity, like fate's another thing that just happens. If they believe in fate at all, which not all of them do. Hello, very, very disheveled editing, Lydia. My hair looks terrible. I'm getting into semantics here, but I just had to say that, well, if you are actually a Kalonite, then yeah, you would believe in fates. But if you were just a Daramon living in a Kalonite territory, then you might not necessarily believe in fates. That's not very important, but I just had to correct myself. But then they have Lord Jaren, the Wodrinaroon, whose job is he's like the religious figure, and his job is to speak to the fates and, like, interpret that truth so that people will understand, like, what's good and what's bad. And that's what led to like the enslavement of the Phenarlum, my race of doll people, because the Wodrinaroon said that the doll people were bad in a past life, and that's what led to them to be reincarnated as a lesser race, and therefore it is fine to mistreat them because that is just a law of fate. And that's where it gets all sticky. The Vendiri believe in specific gods, but they also believe in fate, but in a little bit more of a gentle way, I would say, because it's almost like, since they do have the gods to sort of funnel those beliefs through, their idea is that when you die, you will go spend some time in the realm of these death gods. And the role of these death gods is to kind of help you prepare for your next life, like the transition between your old life and your next life, and to like be at peace with this process of dying and renewal. And the Vendiri death gods, they believe that you have the potential to actually sort of steer your fate in your next life, or like, maybe learn something in the spirit world, so that your next reincarnation, like even if you messed up in your life, you have a certain period with your death gods that you could maybe learn from what you've done, rather than just being immediately cursed to repeat or even worsen those mistakes. So their death gods kind of have like a teacher role. I don't really even talk about this in the book, but they're kind of meant to be guides and teachers, and they don't really judge you. They are just trying to help you accept this process of dying and your life ending and whatever comes next. And I kind of just made all this up, like, I didn't think too deeply about it. It just kind of came to me as I was writing, like, okay, sure, we'll roll with it. But I've actually come to really like the Vendiri death gods and just the Vendiri beliefs. They're sweet. They're kind of welcoming people generally. Like they're not perfect, but I wouldn't mind being a Vendiri. I like it when I have different cultures, and there are some cultures in the Hidden Lands that I would not want to be a part of, but I try to pepper in enough that seem like, this seems like a pretty fun place to live. I wouldn't mind living as a Vendiri. I wouldn't mind living as your average Miralem who just has kind of a nice little cozy agricultural life. They're a fairly accepting and easygoing people. And I also wouldn't mind living in the Atlantis that Alfred and crew are in, the more modernizing world that starts to become it's got a lot of problems, but it's becoming more dynamic and more diverse and accepting. There's a lot of places that seem like they'd be a fun place to live. And there's some other places I would not want to live at all. Also, if you are one of the people who likes my playlists, I struggled a lot with the playlist for this book because initially I had this idea for a sound. I'm all about the vibe, not so much the lyrics or historical accuracy or anything. This book takes place kind of in a somewhere between a gas lamp vibe and the 1920s, mid 1920s is kind of where we're going for, but all in this sort of particular religious goth neighborhood. They're a little backwards, a little Victorian morning energy going on. Nevertheless, because of Una and Vari's personalities, my initial thought veered toward kind of a 90s sound, kind of a fun, 90s rock. With Vari, I thought about a lot of just kind of fun 90s rock songs, and with Una, I thought a little bit of the more poetic side, your Tori Amos and stuff like that. But as I was listening more and more over time, I really went in a Kate Bush direction with Una's vibe. It just seemed to pull me like a magnet, which is funny. I've never listened to Kate Bush before. I always found her a little too weird, but she's so perfect for Una. I suddenly started listening to a lot of Kate Bush, which is how my music goes actually a lot of the time. There'll be some artists that I'm I don't really get them. And then I realize the reason I don't get them is because none of my characters would listen to them. I'm not even sure who's pulling the strings here as far as what kind of music I like. And Tehran, I just could not help. Tehran's the primary, secondary character. If you've read The Potion Dealers, he appears in there. He's the founder of the Order of the Arcane Hand, the community of sorcerers that were blinded in the war that Alfred is trying to find all of their writings and like connect with them. But Tehran is the originator. He appears in this book, and he's kind of he's a character. And the whole time, like as soon as I wrote him, I saw him as looking like Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, like particularly the mid-70s. Like, you know, he's been living out in the woods and he's gotten a little ragged. So I also ended up naturally associating Jethro Tull's music with Tehran. So ultimately, you know, the playlist is kind of trying to capture the mood of girl who reads a lot of the kind of novels that you're obsessed with when you were a dreamy teenager, because, you know, Una's pretty young for that matter. She's only in her early 20s, so she's barely an adult. In fact, she's barely even considered an adult by the standards of people who usually live to be like 120, 130. So yeah, that's the vibe. We still got some Tori Amos, Kate Bush, Stevie Nicks. We got some Oingo Boingo on there. I think of that as a little more Vari music, because Vari is just, he almost looks kind of like your classic, you know, vampire. I really struggle to draw Vari, and I think it's because once I realized how much Taika Waititi in the original What We Do in the Shadows movie looks like Vari, I can't improve upon this. But he's also just like a goofball who's like sweet. So I felt like the like peppy Danny Elfman 80s rock just fits him somehow. And as with most of these playlists, you know, it's not about the lyrics, it's more about the vibes. Like I've got In the Pines by Lead Belly. The lyrics don't have anything to do with anything, but the atmosphere of that song to me perfectly fits the swamp that is a setting in the first chunk of the book. So it's a bit of a weird playlist, but I'll put it in the description. After I finish the book, I need a little bit of a break. So the weather, we've had very mild August for the most part. We went to the Biltmore, and it was a cold, dreary autumn day in early August, which was fantastic. So perfect for having finished this book. The mood was it was a very Una-ish sort of day, if I've ever seen one. And we had a little adventure there. So come join me on a little adventure to the Biltmore. Well, it's August, and we just renewed our Biltmore passes. We hadn't been since the hurricane, and we let our passes expire, but it's August and it's cold and rainy, which is my little Capricorn heart's favorite weather. So I renewed the passes and we're back out here in nature, which is good because I feel like I needed a break this month. And when I say break, I definitely mean that loosely. I have a ton of things to do this month, but I'm hoping this can kind of be like a catch up and replenish the soul kind of month. And this weather is definitely helping, so we're going to explore the Biltmore a little today. They said it was supposed to be a 10% chance of rain today, and it has been raining for hours. But it's just the right kind of rain. It's like not too cold, not too heavy. Just makes everything look really mysterious. Hey guy, don't worry. We're not gonna hurt your sheep. Just gotta come check us out. What a face. You're not asleep today. You're quite on alert. Like, why are you people out in the rain looking at my sheep, although there's no sheep visible whatsoever? Maybe you're just bored. It's a little turkey family. They're so cute. And what's next? Well, now that I'm done with that, very, very happy to have that done and dusted. And now I just finished a proper outline for the sequel to the Potion Dealers. My working title for it is just The Order of the Arcane Hand, but I might have a different title, but for now that's what we're going to call it. I can tell it's going to be long, and then I'm also working on the Shattered King, which I think I'm about 35,000 words deep into, and it's also going to be long. We're looking at probably 2 of my longest books ever here, so I better get to work in short. But I'm really excited about both of these projects, and I want to get them done. I have been thinking about all these characters so much, and just I can't wait to have it where the world, this like first part, is all linked together in one cohesive thing that you could read in order if you wanted to. And once I've got the Dragon Kingdom saga done, the only story that's missing in the middle that I really need to do is the Dormangara and Kessely story. But first I'm gonna finish the Dragon Kingdom. And the Potion Dealers, Alfred and Livonia story is just something I can't help working on because they're just very easy to write. So when I'm having a bad day and I don't want to do anything else, I can usually still muster the excitement to write about those characters. So it's good to have something like that hanging around. So yeah, that's about where I'm at. Just having a chill, cool Saturday. And I need to clean my kitchen and make some lunch. The cupboards are getting a little bare, but I pulled some frozen steak out of the freezer. The steak I bought in July, and it said it was $10.99 a pound. And the same steak last time I went to the store was $18.99 a pound. It almost doubled in price in 6 weeks. So this is the last steak I'm ever gonna eat because $10.99, that's already getting real fancy for me. That's like, this is a special meal. So I'm probably the last steak I'm ever gonna eat. I'm gonna make it with some mushrooms and green beans and a little spätzle noodles. And it'll be delicious, and then I will get to work on some writing. So I hope you're having a good writing time. Let me know what you guys are all working on and how your summer is going, and if you're excited for fall. If you happen to be new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove. I'm a fantasy author, and on this channel I talk about the creative life in general and the writing life in particular. If you want more from me, if you want to hang out on a daily basis and chat about writing and creative stuff and life in general, you can join my Patreon, my Substack, or my YouTube memberships. $5 a month gets you 2 bonus videos every month and access to my Discord server. My free book of the month is Fae Sworn. It is quite steamy and quite silly, and it's a good summer read, I think, because it's just lighthearted fun. But of course, if you want the books that are my real passion, you want to look for my Hidden Lands books, of which Wanted, Brooding, Man, Tragic Past will be part of that series. And if you want to catch my lives, I usually post on Sundays at 3 p.m. and sometimes on Wednesdays at 8 or 9 p.m. as well. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, especially my Patreons and members. You are what keeps me going, but I appreciate all of you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, there's my little guy. There's my little guy. And there's the floof chin. There's the mighty floof chin. Oh. Yeah, there you are. There you are. You like it when I talk to you. Yeah. There you are. There you are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.